Over the last couple of weeks, I've done a couple of outings with my little RX1R Mark II. Those of you who watch the channel know that for professional purposes, I use a Sony A1 and a Sony A7S III. But for street photography and photo walks and that kind of photography, I particularly enjoy using this little RX1R Mark II. But anyway, I went out on a couple of different photo sessions. One was a photo walk and the other was a street photography session. And when I got back home after these events, I saw that the image sets from each of these were actually quite different. The kind of images that I got from the photo walk were quite different from the images that I got from the street photography session. And so I've learned a bit about both of these activities that might help a little bit in planning how you want to use your camera, how you want to do urban, street and photo walk type photography. So let's get into it and have a look at that. The photo walk was one that I picked from a book of walks that start and finish on the Elizabeth line stations in London. This one started at Tottenham Court Road and finished at Farringdon. On the walk you go through Soho Square, Phoenix Gardens, Seven Dials, Covent Garden, Lincoln's Inn Fields, Inns of Court, Temple Church, and past Dr. Johnson's house. There are hidden alleyways, squares and gardens, all of which I was unfamiliar with. It's definitely not one of the common tourist areas of London. On checking my images, the time taken from the first shot through to the last shot was about 3 hours, and I came away with 83 images. However, when I narrowed them down to what I might have regarded as keepers, it turns out there were really only 14 or 15 of them. And even then, when I looked at them, they often seemed to be more like touristy shots than particularly street photography images. I did get some nice shots, I must say, but the hit rate wasn't really that great. As I say, overall, I was a little bit dissatisfied with what I got. On the positive side, I did find a number of places that I would go back to, and they're sort of certainly worth exploring. There are a lot of public spaces in London where people go and take a newspaper or take a book and spend some time reading and just enjoying the area. So I would definitely like to go back to some of those places. And there were just other areas that I think, like this guitar shop, that could be useful for street photography. There were a few interesting things to see along the way, like this passageway between two buildings up at altitude. And then when you get to Covent Garden, which is a more familiar place, I must admit, those colonnades create good leading lines. And then in Covent Garden itself, in what I think is called the South Hall, there's usually musicians playing that you can see here, and that's a good opportunity to do a little bit of people watching. A lot of the areas that you find around the Royal Courts of Justice are quite picturesque as well. I did find some interesting things to photograph along the way, and as I say, there are lots of little courtyards and places that are interesting to photograph. You might not have heard of Dr. Johnson. It's Samuel Johnson, and he certainly is known for a number of great quotes and books that he has written. A couple of Samuel Johnson's quotes: "When a man is tired of London, he is tired of life, for in London there is all that life can afford." And that's particularly relevant, I guess, to a photographer who spends a bit of time shooting in London. This, I think, is definitely the best address in London, 1 Gunpowder Square, and there is the gun that relates to it. So I did find some interesting things, but it wasn't so much street photography, but I did find these areas, as I say, and I would very much like to go back to them to do a little bit more people watching and see what we can get out of that. So that's my experience of the photo walk. Let's now turn to another outing that I did over the last couple of weeks, which was a street photography session, and I did this starting in the South Bank and moving on to Westminster Bridge. And this I found completely different because I spent time. It was beautiful light that evening. There were long shadows. The sun was setting. The sky was changing quite a bit. But I really enjoyed the fact that I could spend some time and just find those images that I thought were interesting. And this is an outdoor bookstall, and the reason I took this shot is because of the absolutely beautiful warm light of the sunset on the books. And then there were these other photographs, you know, with the long shadows that I particularly enjoyed taking. I enjoyed the high contrast of these shots that were there and the light as the sun set. There were geometric things to photograph, and I took this shot because I loved the reflections in the windows that were here. The London eye is always photogenic, and as I say, the sky was just fabulous that evening with the beautiful colours that were in it. I did a little bit of photography at Westminster Bridge. I did some HDR shots of the Palace of Westminster, which is the UK Parliament. And as evening comes along, then the bridge is lit up and the colours change under the bridge as time moves along. I did really enjoy the shooting at sunset. Then you get all the commuters going home from work and speeding along on their journey home. So that really was a much different experience. If I look at the photographs that I got, it was a shorter period of time, more like 2 hours. I didn't take as many photographs, but I really found that there was a higher hit rate, and I enjoyed the photographs that I did take. So what are my takeaways from this? Well, the chief takeaway is that getting good street photography requires you spending time at a specific location or a couple of locations and studying what's going on in those locations, becoming really observant, watching the people, watching the characteristics of what's happening in that area, watching the light as it changes. All of those things are very difficult to do on a photo walk. But a photo walk has other advantages. Often photo walks are done with a group of people, so it's a real social experience when a number of people are out with their cameras. But it's also a great way to scout locations that you might want to go back to, spend a little bit more time on, and do the dedicated street photography thing. So I hope you found this interesting, and if you did, please subscribe, give the video a like, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.